It's interesting that so many people who live in Dayton do not realize they have a national park in their own backyard. Dayton Aviation Heritage National Historical Park was created almost experimentally. It is unlike any other national park. This park is about inspiration. It's about grit, it's about resiliency, it's about failing and getting up and going forward. The story here is astounding.
The phrase that is used quite frequently is that the Wright brothers taught the world to fly. And the story of the Wright brothers is just a fascinating one and inspires minds of all ages.
In 2004, Congress designated the National Aviation Heritage Area because there were already significant assets in this region that tell our nationally significant story. So the Heritage Area sets the table for 17 designated aviation heritage partners to cooperate and collaborate on projects and programs. I love talking about the Wright Factory mural project. We were anticipating the West Dayton Metro Library opening, and as a good partner, we wanted to make sure the Wright Factory buildings were in the best condition possible for that opening.
The Wright Company factory is an amazing site, though if to look at it, you wouldn't think so. Even when it was built in 1910, the newspapers of the time talked about how it was a fairly lackluster building.
The Wright Company factory buildings are critical for our aviation heritage because they are the first purpose-built structures for the manufacturing of aircraft. It signals the change from hobby to industry.
One thing that intrigued me when they brought up placing these murals at the Wright Factory or the Wright Company, you got to realize this was the very first airplane factory in the world. In the world. And it's right here in Dayton, Ohio. That's just a mind blower.
Our vision for the Wright Company factory murals was to emulate the WPA style that emerged in the 1930s under President Roosevelt through his Works Progress Administration. At that time, artists were commissioned to do National Park Service posters as a work relief program. So we hearkened back to that style with our project.
We felt that Mark Reedy would be an ideal person for this project because Mark has just an incredible portfolio. We had also worked on the Cincinnati Reds Stadium, and Mark had handled 2 vintage style murals that showed the 1975 Reds and then the 1869 Reds. Along with it, a sculpture that's out front of the stadium that also has that WPA or that Art Deco feel to it. So we felt that it really tied in quite well with what we were trying to achieve here with the Wright Factory.
Those are nice projects because there's a sense of permanence. In my business, we don't get involved in too many things that last. In the advertising business, things are pretty transient, but that's something that's going to be there for a while. We always kid that our museum is like the frozen food section, where you can see my Red Baron pizza design. I did the portrait of the Red Baron. You can go buy a bag of Quikrete and see all the Quikrete bags. I did all those illustrations. In the 90s, I illustrated all the Nerf toys packaging, so every kid in our neighborhood was modeling for a Nerf toy. The process of an illustrative designer, first thing is we collect information, collect pictorial images. We're dealing with visual storytelling. So first part is just show me what was going on in the early 1900s with them, what exists, either old black and white photographs or just stories, things that kind of get me in the mode of just what life was like then. I'm looking for interesting visuals that I can do something with as a designer. After the research portion, I just start sketching. And then from there, I take those sketches and scan them. And the computer is where most of the magic happens as far as color and building that final image.
The murals were a series of 6, and those are the 6 sites of the Dayton Aviation Heritage National Historic Park. The reaction to the murals was extremely positive. Our partners at that site and across the region saw the value both in the artwork and the beautification of the factory buildings.
I think the murals brought some life to this location, to the factory site. prior to them being up, this was just kind of an abandoned site that probably people would overlook. I think it was a wise thing to install them here and kind of get a spark going. But then, of course, the fire here cut that short.
In the early morning hours of Sunday, March 26th, the Wright Company factory caught on fire. It is my understanding that the Dayton Fire Department responded within minutes. It was known at the time they arrived that this was the Wright Company factory buildings. I believe that if it had been a different structure, it would have been allowed to burn.
I will tell you, I literally broke into tears when I heard, even now I'm going to break into tears, when I heard that on March 26th, the factory was on fire. It's a near catastrophic fire. There's been a lot of damage out there. We're still waiting for reports to tell us just how extensive is it? You know, how much of a loss is there at the factory? And until we get more information, we're just going to have to be patient.
I would say that the fire is just a huge tragedy. If there is a silver lining in it all, is the national attention that it has brought to the property. To have national journalists covering it, I think it helps remind our local community that what we have in our backyard shouldn't be taken for granted, and it is actually really, really special. I know it's painful to reclaim a burned building, but I hope that we are able to do that, and time will tell if it's able to be done or not.